In a quiet suburban neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, where manicured lawns and picket fences paint a picture of domestic bliss, a seemingly perfect family's life unraveled in a web of deceit, passion, and ultimately murder. The Jacksons were the envy of Peachtree Heights. Michael Jackson, a 45-year-old successful businessman, had it all: a thriving career, a beautiful home, and a loving family. 5 years after losing his first wife to cancer, Michael found love again with Lisa, a stunning 35-year-old former model. Their fairy tale wedding 2 years ago was the talk of the town. Lisa seamlessly stepped into the role of stepmother to Michael's son, Darius, a bright 20-year-old college student from the outside. They were the picture-perfect Black American family, successful, attractive, and happy. But behind closed doors, a storm was brewing. Forbidden desires, hidden resentments, and dangerous secrets threatened to tear this family apart. What began as stolen glances and innocent touches would spiral into a passionate affair that defied all boundaries. As we go deeper into the Jackson family story, we'll uncover a shocking tale of betrayal that culminated in an unthinkable act. How did a housewife's illicit pregnancy lead to murder? What drove a son to turn against his father? And how did a family's facade of perfection crumble, leaving destruction in its wake? Prepare yourselves for a journey into the dark heart of Bourbon, Atlanta, where love turned toxic and family ties became deadly. This is the story of how a housewife's pregnancy by her stepson ended in murder, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. To understand the tragedy that befell the Jacksons, we must first step into their world, a world of success, beauty, and apparent harmony. Let's meet the players in this ill-fated drama. Michael Jackson, 45 years old, stood as a pillar of the community. A self-made man, Michael had climbed the corporate ladder with determination and charm, becoming one of Atlanta's most respected business consultants. His colleagues described him as sharp, ambitious, and always impeccably dressed in tailored suits that spoke of his success. But Michael's life wasn't all boardrooms and bottom lines. 5 years ago, tragedy struck when his first wife, Darius's mother, lost her battle with cancer. For a time, Michael's world crumbled. He threw himself into his work, struggling to balance his grief with single parenthood. Then, like a ray of sunshine breaking through storm clouds, Lisa entered his life at 35. Lisa Jackson was a vision of grace and beauty. A former model, she had graced the covers of magazines and strutted down runways from New York to Paris. But Lisa was more than just a pretty face. She was intelligent, charismatic, and seemed to genuinely care for both Michael and Darius. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a lavish wedding 2 years ago, an event that still had tongues wagging in their affluent Atlanta suburb. Lisa embraced her new role as wife and stepmother with apparent enthusiasm, often seen cheering at Darius's basketball games or hosting elegant dinner parties for Michael's business associates. And then there was Darius Jackson, 20 years old and full of promise, a sophomore at Emory University. Darius was studying business, following in his father's footsteps. Handsome and athletic, he was the star of the university's basketball team. Despite offers to live on campus, Darius chose to stay at home, citing his desire to be there for his father and new stepmother. From the outside, the Jacksons seemed to have it all. Their sprawling home in Peachtree Heights was a showcase of tasteful luxury. Neighbors would often see the family taking evening walks together, Michael and Lisa, hand in hand with Darius. Beside them all, smiles and laughter. But appearances can be deceiving behind the pristine facade of their red brick mansion. Tension simmered. Michael's long hours at the office often left Lisa alone, her smile a little strained when he'd come home late. Yet again, Darius, while polite to Lisa and his father's presence, would sometimes regard her with a look that was anything but filial. When Michael's back was turned and Lisa, her eyes would occasionally linger on her stepson. A moment too long, her laughter at his jokes a touch too bright. In quiet moments when she thought no one was looking, a flicker of discontent would cross her flawless features, hinting at desires unfulfilled and resentments unspoken. Yes, the Jacksons had wealth, status, and outward beauty, but beneath the surface a storm was brewing, one that would soon break with devastating consequences as winter die into spring. So, too, did the icy barriers of propriety within the Jackson household. What began as fleeting glances and accidental touch soon kindled into a dangerous flame of desire. Lisa found herself increasingly drawn to her stepson. Perhaps it was his youthful vitality, so reminiscent of her modeling days, or the attention he unknowingly offered when Michael was. Absent whatever the cause, her attraction grew with each passing day. At first, Darius seemed oblivious to Lisa's lingering looks and subtle flirtations. When awareness finally dawned, he was horrified. This was his father's wife, after all. He tried to distance himself, making excuses to stay late at university or spend weekends with friends, but Lisa was persistent. A touch that lasted too long here, a seemingly innocent comment there. Slowly, inevitably, Darius's resistance began to crumble. Their first kiss was a moment of weakness, a perfect storm of circumstance. Michael was away on business, and Darius had come home early from a party, slightly intoxicated. Lisa, lonely and vulnerable, had been waiting up in the dim light of the kitchen. Inhibitions lowered, they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Guilt and shame, wed with desire in the aftermath, both swore it would never happen again. But like moths to a flame, they found themselves drawn back together. Stolen moments becoming more frequent, more passionate. Their encounters were fraught with danger and excitement. A hurried embrace in the laundry room while Michael showered upstairs, a secret rendezvous in Darius's car, parked in a secluded spot by the Chattahoochee River. Each time they promised it would be the last. Each time they lied. There were close calls once. Michael nearly caught them in a compromising position in the pool house, saved only by Lisa's quick thinking and Darius's hasty exit through a back window. Another time, a neighbor's raised eyebrow at seeing Lisa and Darius return from a suspiciously long grocery run sent panic through them both. But the danger only seemed to fuel their passion as spring bloomed into summer. So did their affair. What had started as a physical attraction deepened into something more complex. Lisa found in Darius the excitement and adoration she craved. Darius, in turn, was intoxicated by Lisa's maturity and the forbidden nature of their relationship. Yet even as their affair intensified, neither could fully shake the cloud of guilt that hung over them. Darius struggled to meet his father's eyes over the dinner table. Lisa's smiles became strained, her laughter forced. When Michael spoke of their future together, they were riding a whirlwind swept up in passion and secrecy. But as any meteorologist will tell you, whirlwinds, no matter how thrilling, leave only destruction in their wake. And in the Jackson household, a storm was brewing, one that would soon break, with consequences more dire than either Lisa or Darius could have ever imagined. As summer waned, a new development threatened to shatter the precarious balance within the Jackson home. Lisa, who had been feeling unwell for weeks, made a discovery that would change everything alone in the master bathroom. Lisa stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines positive, her world tilted on its axis as the implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. Lisa's mind raced. The timing, it could be Michael's, couldn't it? But deep down she knew the truth. The child growing inside her was Darius's, her stepson's, the product of their illicit affair. Panic set in. As Lisa realized the magnitude of her situation, she couldn't let Michael know the truth. She had to act fast to cover her tracks that night. When Michael returned from work, Lisa greeted him with unusual enthusiasm. She wore her most alluring outfit, poured him his favorite whiskey, and led him to the bedroom. It had been weeks since they'd been intimate. Michael's work schedule and her illness, creating a convenient distance now she did that intimacy as an alibi. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. Lisa timed her discovery of the pregnancy, perfectly presenting Michael with the news over a candlelit dinner. His joy was palpable, his excitement genuine. Lisa's smile never reached her eyes. Darius, however, was not so easily fooled. When Lisa finally gathered the courage to tell him, his reaction was a mix of shock, fear, and something else. A fleeting glimmer of excitement quickly doused by the weight of their reality. "Are you sure it's mine?" Darius had whispered, his voice cracking. Lisa's silent nod was all the confirmation he needed. The color drained from his face as the full impact hit him. He was going to be a father to his stepmother's child, to his father's grandchild. The twisted nature of their situation threatened to overwhelm him. As the weeks passed, the strain on the household became palpable. Michael, blissfully unaware, threw himself into preparing for fatherhood with gusto. He painted the nursery on weekends, read parenting books, and doted on Lisa with renewed affection. Lisa, meanwhile, walked a tightrope of emotions. Morning sickness provided a convenient excuse for her pale complexion and frequent bathroom trips, but the guilt was eating her alive. Each loving gesture from Michael was like a knife to her heart. Darius retreated into himself. He spent more time away from home, throwing himself into his studies and basketball with a fervor that bordered on obsession. When he was home, the tension between him and Lisa was electric, noticed even by the oblivious. "Michael, is everything okay between you two?" Michael asked one night over dinner, his brow furrowed in concern. "Everything's fine, Dad," Darius muttered, not meeting his father's eyes. "Of course, darling." Lisa added, her smile brittle. "Just pregnancy hormones making me a bit moody, but everything was far from fine." The weight of their secret pressed down on Lisa and Darius, threatening to crush them, every sonogram picture, every kick. Lisa felt every excited comment from Michael pushed them closer to the edge. They were sitting on a powder keg, and the fuse was burning short. It was only a matter of time before their carefully constructed lies came crashing down around them. Little did they know the worst was yet to come. The decision Lisa would make next would set in motion a chain of events that would end in tragedy. As Lisa's pregnancy progressed, so did her desperation. The web of lies she had spun was beginning to fray, at the edges threatening to unravel entirely. Time was running out. Soon the baby would be born, and there would be no hiding the truth. Michael had already commented on how the child seemed to be developing. Faster than expected, it was only a matter of time before he would insist on a paternity test, if only to rule out any potential health issues. Lisa knew she was trapped. Her mind, once filled with dreams of fashion runways and glamorous parties, now turned to darker thoughts. She began to see only one way out of her predicament. The idea came to her one sleepless night as she lay beside Michael, his gentle snores, a stark contrast to the turmoil in her mind. If Michael were to die, her problems would die with him. The thought, once formed, refused to leave Lisa. Planning was meticulous. She researched untraceable poisons, studying their effects and how to obtain them. She familiarized herself with Michael's life insurance policy, ensuring she was the sole beneficiary. She even began to subtly mention to friends how stressed and overworked Michael had been, lately planting seeds of a potential health crisis. Every detail was considered. Lisa chose a slow-acting poison that would mimic the symptoms of a heart attack. She planned to administer it over time, building up the dosage gradually to avoid suspicion. In her mind, it was the perfect crime. Michael would pass away seemingly from natural causes, leaving her free to raise her child, their child, with Darius. But Lisa knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed an alibi, someone to corroborate her story. When the time came, she needed Darius's reaction. When Lisa finally revealed her plan was one of horror and disbelief. "You can't be serious," he had whispered, his face pale in the dim light of his bedroom. "That's my father you're talking about." Lisa's eyes had flashed with a desperation that chilled Darius to his core. "It's the only way," she insisted. "Do you want your father to know what we've done? Do you want this child to be born into scandal and shame?" Darius found himself torn between loyalty to his father and fear of the consequences of their actions. The weight of their secret pressed down on him, suffocating him with guilt and indecision. Days passed as Darius grappled with Lisa's proposal. He avoided his father's eyes at the breakfast table, feeling sick every time Michael spoke excitedly about the baby's impending arrival. The sight of Lisa calmly going about her daily routine, all while planning his father's murder, filled him with a mixture of revulsion and a twisted sort of admiration, finally worn down by Lisa's relentless pressure and his own fear of discovery. Darius gave in his agreement, was reluctant, a whispered okay that seemed to echo in the silence of the night. With those words, he became an accomplice to murder. As Lisa's plan moved forward, Darius found himself caught in a nightmare of his own making. He watched in silent horror as Lisa began to slip small amounts of poison into Michael's evening tea. He listened with a forced smile as his father complained of feeling under the weather, knowing the true cause of his deteriorating health. The stage was set. The players were in position. As Michael's health began to decline, Lisa and Darius waited with bated breath for their plan to reach its tragic conclusion. But in the dark world of murder and betrayal, things rarely go as planned. The night of October 15th started like any other in the Jackson household, but beneath the calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Tonight was the night Lisa had chosen to put her plan into action. As the hands of the grandfather clock in the hallway struck 900 p.m., Lisa's heart raced. She moved with practiced ease, preparing Michael's nightly tea. Earl Grey, his favorite. Her hands trembled slightly as she added the final, fatal dose of poison. Michael sat in his study, oblivious to the danger that approached. He smiled warmly. As Lisa entered, gratefully accepting the steaming cup, Lisa perched on the edge of his desk, engaging him in light conversation, her eyes fixed on the cup as Michael raised it to his lips. Upstairs, Darius paced in his room, his conscience waging war with his fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled voice from below sent his heart racing. He was an accomplice to murder, and the weight of that knowledge threatened to crush him. As minutes ticked by, Lisa watched Michael intently, waiting for the poison to take effect, but something was wrong. Michael's brow furrowed, not in pain, but in confusion. He looked at the cup, then at Lisa, suspicion dawning in his eyes. "This tastes different," he said, slowly pushing the cup away. Lisa's carefully constructed plan began to unravel in her panic. She had added too much poison, altering the tea's flavor. Michael, always attuned to detail, had noticed what happened next was a blur of motion and sound. Michael, realizing something was terribly wrong, stood up abruptly. Lisa, driven by desperation, grabbed the heavy marble paperweight from his desk. Their eyes met for a brief, horrifying moment before Lisa swung. The sickening sound of impact filled the room. Michael crumpled to the floor, a trickle of blood forming around his head. Lisa stood frozen, the paperweight slipping from her grasp. The house fell into a deathly quiet, broken only by the sound of Darius's footsteps racing down the stairs. He burst into the study, his face a mask of terror as he took in the scene before him. "What have you done?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Lisa, shaking uncontrollably, turned to him with wild eyes. "Help me," she pleaded. We have to make this look like an accident." The next few hours were a nightmare of cleanup and staged evidence. They positioned Michael at the bottom of the stairs, creating the illusion of a tragic fall. Lisa smeared her makeup, preparing to play the part of the distraught wife at midnight. With trembling fingers, Lisa dialed 911, please. She sobbed into the phone, her acting skills put to the ultimate test. "My husband, he's fallen down the stairs. He's not breathing. Please hurry." As the wail of approaching sirens filled the air, Lisa and Darius exchanged a look of mingled fear and grim resolution. There was no turning back now. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. The police arrived within minutes, followed closely by paramedics, as flashlights swept the scene and questions began. Lisa clung to Darius, both playing their parts in this macabre theater. But even as they answered the officers' questions, they knew that this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. As dawn broke over Atlanta, State Detective Alicia Thompson arrived at the Jackson residence, a veteran of the Homicide Division. Thompson's keen eyes missed nothing as she surveyed the scene. "Something doesn't add up," she muttered, crouching by the stairs where Michael's body had been found. Thompson's investigation began with standard procedure. She interviewed Lisa and Darius separately, noting their grief-stricken demeanor. To the untrained eye, they appeared to be a family in mourning. But Thompson sensed an undercurrent of attention, a flicker of something more in their eyes. Initially, the evidence seemed to support the accident theory. Michael's health had been declining, potentially contributing to a fall. Colleagues confirmed his heavy workload and stress. It appeared to be a tragic but straightforward case. But Detective Thompson wasn't satisfied. Small inconsistencies nagged at her. The position of Michael's body didn't quite match a typical fall, and then there was the talk screen. Traces of an unusual substance were found in Michael's system. As Thompson dug deeper, more red flags emerged. Lisa's timeline of events didn't quite align with the neighbors' recollection of when they heard the commotion. Darius's alibi for the hours leading up to the incident was vague and unverifiable. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Michael's smartwatch. The health data showed a sudden drastic spike in heart rate moments before his supposed fall, inconsistent with simply losing balance, armed with a search warrant. Thompson's team combed the Jackson home in a locked drawer in Lisa's vanity. They found a vial of the same substance detected in Michael's toxicology report hidden in Darius's room. A crumpled note detailed what appeared to be the early stages of a plan. As news of the investigation spread, the affluent Atlanta suburb was rocked to its core. Neighbors who had once envied the Jacksons now whispered behind closed doors. How could this happen? In their community, Lisa's baby shower planned for the following week was hastily canceled. Darius was suspended from the basketball team, pending the investigation. The perfect facade of the Jackson family crumbled under the weight of suspicion and scandal in a shocking turn of events. It was Darius who finally broke, unable to bear the guilt. Any longer, he confessed everything to Detective Thompson, the affair, the pregnancy, and the desperate plan that had led to his father's death. As Lisa and Darius were LED away in handcuffs, their neighbors watched in stunned silence. The community that had once held the Jacksons as a shining example of success was left to grapple with the dark truth that had been hiding in plain sight. Detective Thompson stood on the front lawn of the Jackson home, watching as crime scene tape fluttered in the breeze. She'd solved the case, but the tragedy of it all weighed heavily on her. A family destroyed, lives ruined, all because of secrets and lies. As the sun set on Peachtree Heights, casting long shadows across manicured lawns, the neighborhood would never be quite the same again. The Jackson case would serve as a grim reminder that sometimes the perfect life is anything but. In the wake of Darius's confession, the legal machinery of Efton County swung into action. Lisa and Darius Jackson were arrested and charged with the murder of Michael Jackson. The district attorney's office, sensing the high-profile nature of the case, assigned their top prosecutor. The trial that followed captivated Atlanta and made national headlines over 6 grueling weeks. The sordid details of the Jackson family tragedy were laid bare for the jury and the public. The prosecution painted a picture of greed, lust, and desperation. The defense argued for leniency, citing the pressure of circumstances and momentary lapses in judgment. In the end, the evidence was too damning to ignore. The jury deliberated for just 2 days before returning their verdict, guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing, the judge's words were stern and unequivocal. Lisa Jackson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. Darius, in consideration of his eventual cooperation with authorities, received a sentence of 25 years to life as mother and son were LED away to begin their sentences. A palpable sense of loss hung over the courtroom. There were no winners here, only victims. Michael, whose life was cut tragically short, the unborn child, who would enter the world behind prison walls, and yes, even Lisa and Darius, whose actions had irrevocably altered the course of their lives in the months and years that followed. The impact of the Jackson case continued to reverberate through Atlanta and beyond. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Books were written, attempting to understand the psychology behind the tragedy. The affluent neighborhood of Peachtree Heights, once a symbol of success and stability, became synonymous with scandal and hidden darkness. But perhaps the most profound impact was on those who knew the Jacksons personally. Friends and neighbors were left to grapple with difficult questions. How well do we truly know those around us? What secrets might lie behind the facade of perfection? In the end, the Jackson case serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of secrets and lies. It's a cautionary tale of how quickly a seemingly perfect life can unravel when built on a foundation of deception. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell,